Welcome, everybody. I'm Bill Haggard. I'm the Director of Enterprise Infrastructure with the Dallas Cowboys. This is Ed Mountain. He's our HP account manager. So wanted to kind of give you all a short, brief overview of the technology and stuff we had done at Cowboys Stadium when we opened it last year. And then we'll open it up to any questions and anything y'all may have in the, further on. So.
You might want to ask a question. Has anybody been to this new stadium?
Oh, yeah, that's a good question. Anybody?
Oh, excellent.
Good football game? Bad football game? Good football game? Good. We like good football games. We've had some bad ones in preseason, but we won't talk about that. Some of the things that a lot of people don't know about the Cowboys organization and things that we do, we don't just support the football team in the stadium. We also support 37 other businesses that the family owns in 96 locations. So we're not just in the football business. We're not just in the stadium business. We're not just in the merchandise business, because we do control our own merchandise, where a lot of other teams let the NFL handle that. We actually took that away from the NFL about 6 years ago. So we have, since March of this year, built a new merchandise facility. So we built a mirrored data center to the one at the stadium for that building, so we could use it as a DR location for Valley Ranch, our corporate office, and the stadium. So some of the other businesses that were in financial operations, oil and gas, merchandise, MRI centers. We do have ties to a golf course, resort quality golf course in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. The pro shops, scouting, training camps, call centers, as well as the Dallas Cowboys cheerleaders. They are a business entity all on their own. So when it came to the technology that we were going to implement in the new stadium, we had to not only worry about what it would take to run the stadium on a day-to-day basis, but what it would take to run the 37 exterior businesses and make sure that the technology that we were going to implement would meet their business needs, not today, but 7 to 10 years down the road, without having to do large forklift upgrades in the future. With Cowboy Stadium, we have the most technologically advanced stadium in the world. And that is a direct quote from somebody other than a member of the Cowboys organization. That came from an outside person that had traveled to most of the large sports venues around the world. So we know that the Giants have opened a new stadium this year. They've done a great job. They have implemented a lot of the technology that we did. They just don't have the space that we had to be able to go as far as we did, since they have an open stadium, not a domed stadium. Funny facts about that type stuff. The largest stadium in the NFL before we opened was Reliant Stadium in Houston. How many people's ever seen that one? Makes the Astrodome look like a dwarf, doesn't it? Yeah. You could fit 2 Astrodomes in Reliant Stadium. You can fit 2 Reliant Stadiums in ours. Wow. They're 1.5 million square feet, and we're 3.2 million square feet. So, kind of comparison, if you see it, sitting next to the Astrodome now, you can tell Reliant Stadium is a very large place. We're twice as big as they are. 96 different locations like I talked about. So, we had to worry about not only the technology to run the stadium for 10 pro football games, or 11 or 12, depending on how deep we can get into the playoffs. We also had 4 college games there last year, 10 high school games, 4 concerts, 2 basketball games, a monster truck, a rodeo, and Supercross. So part of the technology, when we were implementing in the stadium, we had to worry about how can we transform the venue very quickly. No static signs, because sponsors and advertising that we do for pro games would be different than college games, would definitely be different from high school games. Some college games you can advertise alcohol and liquor sales. High school games, you cannot do that by UIL rules. So any digital signage or advertising we had in the stadium, we had to make sure we had the ability to transform those very quickly, to change those signs without the manual labor it would take to go behind that. Old Texas Stadium, built in 1971. When Texas Stadium was still open, we spent about 70% of our time on break fix, 30% on innovation and new technologies, things that would help the businesses. We really didn't do anything there. We turned on the lights and gave them a football and told them to have fun. Really, the only technology we had in that stadium was wireless internet access in the press box for the media. That's pretty much it. It was all cash only at the concession stands. We had 2 ATM machines, so if you didn't have cash, you had to go stand in line at the ATM machine. Could be 15 minutes, could be 45 minutes. We had to make sure with the new stadium we made changes that would help affect that in a positive way rather than a negative way. There's a picture of the new place at night. The roof does open. The end zone doors open. So we have the largest glass doors in the world on each end zone on the main level of the stadium. We have doors that will open. They're 185 feet tall, 125 feet wide. So we can open the doors in 12 minutes and the roof in 8. It's all controlled from the infrastructure we implemented in the stadium. New seating. We have capacity of over 100,000. We had 66,000 and some change at Texas Stadium. 3.2 million square feet. We do have a TV that is 60 yards long, 72 feet tall. The entire structure, we have one on each side for the long ones that face the sidelines and 2 screens on that face the end zones that are 50 feet wide and 28 feet tall. We paid $31 million to have Texas Stadium built in 1971. We paid $40 million to have that screen built. It hangs 90 feet off the ground, and it is movable. We can raise it as high as 115 feet or lower it as low as 25 feet. The entire structure hangs from the arches that go end to end on the stadium. They're 1/4 mile long each. That entire video structure weighs 658 tons.
And the Guinness Book of Records were there last year to award it the largest HD TV in the world.
That's right.
So not only can you see football players 70 feet tall, you get to see cheerleaders 70 feet tall.
It has its benefits. There is a picture of the inside of the stadium from the upper concourse during the Giants game, right at the beginning of the game last year. The largest event we've had in the stadium so far is not a football game. NBA All-Star game. For the Giants game last year, that game there, we had 105,000 people at the stadium. For the NBA All-Star game, we had 108,000. It's the largest NBA All-Star game they had ever had by 32,000 people. Largest before ours was 76,000. They've told us they would absolutely be back. We've had the Pacquiao-Claude fight. They're talking about doing another fight this year, as well as having mixed martial arts in the stadium. During the Pacquiao-Claude fight last year, Dana White, the president of UFC, was at the stadium. And before the event, before the fight, they had talked to him, and he said he would probably not bring MMA to the stadium because he felt like the people were too far away. After the Pacquiao fight, he said he would absolutely bring the fights back there because of the screen and the way we can get so many people on the floor. It makes you feel like you're closer to the action than when they're in Las Vegas. And the largest venue that they have in Las Vegas to hold an MMA fight is 26,000. So we had 51,000 for the Pacquiao fight. Part of the technology that we had to do from a converged infrastructure perspective to make sure that what we were doing was right for just the stadium itself was put in something that was very scalable and very flexible. So all of the concession stands we have in the stadium, all 212 of them, are treated as their own individual restaurant for reporting reasons and, money purposes, things like that. Each individual concession stand for that has to have its own back-end Windows 2003 server. So we have 254 servers that do nothing but run concession stands. If we did not have virtualization technology and blade technologies with HP, we would have had 10 racks full of servers just for concession stands. With the blade technology and virtualization, we run all of those in 2 C7000 chassis and 16 blades. So it cut down on the amount of cabling, power, cooling, a lot of the ancillary costs from a data center perspective that, if we would have had to have gone completely physical with that technology, we would have filled up, a fifth of our data center to do nothing but run concession stands. So we weren't into voice over IP, digital signage, IPTV, any of the other technologies that we had to have just for concession stands. So 3,000 HD IPTVs. And by the 19th, we'll be at about 3,200. We're actually adding some more before the Super Bowl. We'll probably add another 180 or so to that number. So we'll be approaching 3,500 IPTVs. Each TV is individually IP addressed. So we can control content to every TV as a group or each TV individually. So it gives us the ability to do a little bit like I talked about before, digital signage, target marketing to some suite owners that we wouldn't do to the main public on the main concourse levels. Gives us the ability to sell more advertising. The technology gives us the ability to drive revenue to the organization that we did not have in the past. We've probably sold, $10 million worth of advertising last year because we had the ability to target when it would run, target where it would run, and how often it would run, rather than having static signs that you had to physically change. 700 IP phones. We have 200 employees that are there on a daily basis, so you got to take 200 out of that number. And we have 368 suites, 368 out of that number. Then it's common areas, concession stands, back of house, kitchens, things like that in the stadium. One of the other very cool things we've done is in the suites for the IPTV, there are no remotes. You use the IP phones to change the channels. That way we don't have to worry about remotes walking off all the time more than anything, because they will walk off. We found that out. 700 wireless access points. So we can cover the entire facility, inside and out, with wireless coverage. So we can do wireless ticket scanning on the plazas, in the parking lots, inside the building. So if you're a suite owner and you're in a high-profile area, you don't want just a normal person walking through your area that you paid a lot more money to be there than they did. So we actually scan tickets at different parts of the stadium to make sure you don't get a lot of foot traffic through those areas. The other thing we will do this year that we did not last year is offer Wi-Fi to the public. So if you come in with smartphones, Blackberries, iPhones, PDAs, all that, we will offer Wi-Fi to the public. Now it's a little different from Texas Stadium when we talked about innovation and break fix, where it was 70% break fix, 30% innovation in new technologies. With what we've implemented now at the new stadium, it's more 80% innovation and 20% break fix. And that's a huge speaking for HP's technology and the, ability and scalability and flexibility of their technology and their platform, their hardware, that we can focus more now on new technologies and moving forward in the business and what the businesses need to do to run, rather than having to worry about fixing the problems all the time. I said that one time. I don't remember when it was, but I said that. I've actually done quite a few speaking engagements for HP, and I enjoy doing them. They're a great business partner to work with. They've been great for the Cowboys organization. Having a company stand behind their products and actually deliver on what they tell us that they can deliver on has been huge for us, because it gave us the ability to focus more on what the businesses need to do to run, rather than us having to worry about how to support the hardware if there was a problem. Technology drives revenue. Kind of what we had to do when we were looking at the technology to implement with the 96 different business locations, we had to go to the department heads and the different business entities and find out, okay, what is your 5 to 7 year business plan? What do you need the technology to do today that it wouldn't do yesterday? And what do you need to do 5 years from now that it wouldn't do now? So it gave them a little homework and made them go look at what software vendors they're using, what hardware vendors they're using for different things from an MRI perspective, from the land, oil and gas, the land title companies, the land development. What are those companies going to want to do 5 to 7, 10 years down the road that they can't do now. So it made them go back and do a lot of homework. So we spent a lot of time with the department heads and the different business entities to make sure that the technology that we were going to implement was flexible enough and scalable enough to grow into what they needed to be 5, 7 years down the road. There was no integration between departments when I got there, when we started this process. The suite sales group very rarely dealt with the ticket office at all, and they needed to, because the ticket office prints the tickets for the salespeople to sell to the different suite owners. And so we were able, with some of the technology we implemented, to put a chain in place and give them the ability to go do some of that they didn't have the ability to do in the past. Catering and concessions, like I talked about. With Texas Stadium, the last year we were there, we had 65 concession stands in the entire place. We now have 212. So not only did they have to increase what they were going to do, they had to look at how they were going to manage going from 65 concession stands that were cash only to 212 that would take credit cards at any terminal of the 665 point-of-sale terminals they have for concession stands alone. We also have 10 pro shops inside the stadium. So we have another 82 terminals, point-of-sale terminals in the concession stands, or the retail stores, excuse me. Business continuity efforts. Since we have 3 primary locations, Valley Ranch, which is our corporate office where the players practice every day, the Jones family's primary offices are there. Cheerleading, marketing, all that primarily stays at Valley Ranch. Our merchandise facility, and then Cowboys Stadium. How many people in this room move your corporate office network once a year? We do. We basically move Valley Ranch once a year. Leave it there for 5 weeks, put it back. Call that training camp. We do it every year. This year we did it twice. We did 2 weeks in San Antonio, went back to Dallas for a week, and then came to Oxnard, California for 2 weeks. We have to have scalable and flexible enough technology that when we move everything, the same phone numbers that they call Mr. Jones at Valley Ranch will ring in Oxnard, California. All the same data that he has access to in Valley Ranch, he has to have access to in California or San Antonio. We've done it every year like this for 11 years. And I don't see it changing anytime soon. With the technology that we've implemented between these 3 locations, we do have mirrored HP SANs, 100 terabytes apiece at Valley Ranch and Cowboy Stadium. With our new merchandise facility, we added a third SAN, 76 terabytes. So we can replicate data between the 3 locations for disaster recovery purposes. And with our virtualization infrastructure and technology that we've implemented, we have the ability to also move that around. So if we have a disaster at any of those locations, we can move all of the mission-critical applications to one of the other locations and bring them up in a very short time. And if I'm talking too much, butt in.
No, you're fine.
Part of what we did when we were implementing all the technology in this stadium from a staff perspective, we support the stadium in 96 other locations, and we're very busy. I have a staff of 13. So having HP and their consultants on site with us to help us get this thing up and running in a short period of time was very crucial. So we had their mission critical services and their staff on site with us for probably 5 months.
Yeah, it's not your typical deployment. When we started looking and talking with the Cowboys, this was not going to be a typical deployment to where you just show up at a data center and start installing things. This was a site still under construction. For us to show up and to do our job, we had to go to the construction site, check in, get a hard hat, get an orange vest, and then off to, through all the dust, all the work environment, get to the data center. Not the optimum performance area for putting in new servers and storage. Still very dusty. Had to blow it out when we were, going live and going production. It was more of an outdoor facility than it was an indoor facility at that time. And we worked with the Cowboys at the beginning. Once we saw how important technology was going to be there, we wanted to make sure we put a solution that was going to match that. We didn't want, on Monday Night Football, something to happen to their technology to where the whole world sees it. And we get that phone call from Mr. Jones on Tuesday morning saying you're fired. So we wanted to protect our partners with the Cowboys and IT and make them look good. So one of the things we do, and I think it might be on the next slide, I'm not sure, Bill, but we have 2 people at minimum, maybe 4, depending on the event, that are going to be at each event to make sure our equipment's running fine. We'll check them in early and make sure they've got parts on site, but they'll run through diagnostics, make sure all the equipment's running as expected, so when that event happens, concert, football game, boxing match, whatever, everything's running to specs. Because we see how much criticality is in there for reputation. When you look at the Dallas Cowboys, that brand is so valuable. We can't afford to let anything happen to it.
There's a picture of the data center. And to kind of go back to the virtualization for concession stand versus physical servers. That entire front row of racks, and we're missing 3 in that picture. 1, 2, 3, yeah, 3 in that picture, would have been 2U physical servers for nothing but concession stands without blade technology and virtualization. Some of the behind-the-scenes things. Yeah, we have a data center, it's 5,200 square feet. We have 70 IDF closets in the building. So we have it's actually 265 miles of fiber. So we have 24 strands of multi-mode and 12 strands of single-mode fiber to every closet. We have multiple 10-gig fiber connections, home run back to the data center from every closet for redundancy purposes. On every floor of the stadium, and there's 8 levels, we have a redundant fiber ring around the stadium. So not only does every closet have home run fiber back to the data center, it has fiber that jumps to the next closet. So if the fiber gets cut between 2 closets or gets its home run fiber, it can jump to another closet and come in that way. We have 4.5 million feet of Cat 6A cabling. We did Cat 6A so we have the ability to do 10 gig over copper as it becomes more prevalent in the market. We have 1.5 million square feet of Cat 5E cabling that is primarily only used for ISDN lines and POTS line distribution throughout the facility. Because radio broadcasts and TV broadcasts want IP nothing. They still are on the oldest technology you can imagine. So I have 168 POTS lines and 30 ISDN lines installed in the stadium. So if somebody comes into the stadium and needs those technologies, we extend them to them rather than us letting them order T1s or ISDN lines or whatever in from the phone companies, install them for an event, and rip them back out. We decided to leave them there all the time. If they need one, they have to buy them from me.
And those are all things that you need. So when you have your Super Bowl event and the Department of Homeland Security comes in, the FBI comes in, your local emergency folks are there.
Right. I don't think it's on any of the slides. I'll cover it a little bit. So if I get repetitive on this, I apologize for on the slide perspective. One of the other things we had to worry about in the stadium was cell phone coverage. You get 105,000 people in the stadium. They want to take a picture or send a text message or they want to make a phone call. So we put in a distributed antenna system in the facility to do nothing but carry cell carriers traffic on. We have about, well, they're adding more. It'll be 412, I think, before they're done, cell antennas in the stadium. So they're not riding on Cisco APs. They're totally different antennas. But we have currently 4 cell carriers in the building that are tied to this distributed antenna system. So we can provide complete cell coverage anywhere in the building. Why that is a big deal, not only for the police and fire, because they use cell phones a lot, is if you're on the main concourse level or main level of the stadium, you'll probably get cell phone coverage, maybe the level above them. But when you go to the stadium, if you drive up to it off the street, you're only seeing 2/3 of the building. There's 1/3 of the building that's underground. We have 2 complete levels in the stadium that are underground. With underground, you will not get cell coverage without this type of antenna system in there to carry that signal. Well, I guess I hit the button. Some of the things we had to do and that we did accomplish with the HP technology was, for faster provisioning. When we see a need or get a need from one of the business entities, we need to be able to deploy servers in minutes, not days. I know a lot of you people, probably all of you, have installed servers at one time in your life. If it's not from, way back in the Novell days and swapping all the floppy disks and, or Windows World where it's all on CDs, it can take hours, days to do that type of stuff. We had to have the ability to do that in minutes. The Virtual Connect that we have in the stadium as well as the merchandise facility reduced our cabling numbers and costs by 75%. Because if you've got 16 or 20 servers in a chassis, if they were all physical servers, you're going to have 20 or so cables running down there. With the blade technology and the chassis technologies and virtual connects, we only have 4. Well, there's 4 servers and those 4 blades in it, or 20 blades. We still only have 4 cables that go down there. So it cut down dramatically the cost of what we had to implement and what we had to spend to get all those servers and stuff connected. The vMotion and Insight Dynamics provides constant monitoring. Gives us the ability from a vMotion and Insight Dynamics perspective to watch the health and welfare of the systems that are running and move them either manually if we're alerted or have it set up where they can do it automatically to any of the other virtual hosts we have running in the environment.
And some of those tools can tell our services guys, hey, you've got a drive maybe that's running too slow. You might want to change that. They'll show up a couple of days later, change it before it fails. So some proactive services that we can provide as well.
Uptime and DR was a must for what we were doing. We can't have outages in the facility where, half the concession stands go down. That'd be bad. We couldn't sell a bunch of hot dogs and beer. So we had to make sure with what we were implementing was flexible enough and scalable enough from a converged infrastructure. If we had a problem, that it could either manually or automatically fail over to other hardware that was already in the environment that we knew was operating properly. Migration on time due to virtualization and HP tools. Part of one of the issues we also ran into as we were opening the new stadium, we still had groups that were working at Old Texas Stadium up to the day they locked us out. And when I say locked us out, the city of Irving actually did, and it wasn't a bad split, so don't take that wrong. But the city of Irving owned that facility, and our lease was up March 31st, 2009. So we had groups up until maybe 10 o'clock that morning that were still working in that building that we were having to migrate from Texas Stadium to Cowboys Stadium without taking any outage. They couldn't do that. We were in the process of selling season tickets, advertising, all that for the new stadium. So we had to accomplish this without any downtime. So the rapid deployment was, absolutely something we had to be able to do in minutes, not days. The enhanced resilience on the virtualization of disk across 200 plus disks in an EVA. We have, like I said, we have 100 terabyte SAN at Cowboy Stadium, 100 terabytes at Valley Ranch, and then 76 at our merchandise facility. So with the way that we have, worked with HP to get the resiliency and the striping and technology developed or built for the EVA stuff, it gives us the ability to not worry about if we have one drive go bad in the SAN or 10 drives go bad in the SAN. They have the resiliency and all built in there that it will continue to run.
And the plans were really solid on the IT side. The bigger challenges came more, I think, from what I remember, the construction side, sometimes having spotty power, cooling, because it's a construction facility at the time. And so that was, in the timelines involved, that was more challenging from the construction side than it was from a technology or an IT carrying out their goals.
Well, when we started putting the technology in the new stadium, we found out August the 8th of 2008, the physical location where the data center was going to be. They had moved it around a couple of times. Our first event was June the 6th of 2009. So we had to do a lot in a very short period of time. And without some of the HP tools that we were able to use to help us with the rapid deployment, I don't think we'd have got there. You'll have to talk to that one. I can't read that slide.
That was our TCO study. That was the power of the virtualization, whether it's Virtual Connect or using VMware. Just going from having 300 servers just for their cashiers and for the events of selling hot dogs to going now to a virtualized with 2 enclosures and 16 blades each. Just a huge payback from licenses to power, cooling, space.
Here's more about our merchandise facility where we built that new data center there. We have 35 pro shops that we control outside of the 10 at the stadium. So there's probably 140 employees that work there on a daily basis. We handle the supply chain for all of our merchandise from end to end. We create the graphics, we buy the material, we put them on the shirts, we package them, we ship them out, we control all that. So over there, we run all of that on 4 C7000 chassis and 24 blades.
That speaks to the power of the Cowboys brand, that they, as a football team, do that themselves. You know, we've met with their head personnel, and they do their own design work, their own printing. It's an incredible business. That's part of their business, not to mention their radio station, their TV broadcast station.
Future enhancements under investigation, stuff we're currently looking at. Site Recovery Manager with VMware, of how can we implement that to make our DR strategy more solidified moving forward in case, there is a disaster at Cowboys Stadium. I've talked to quite a few people from the CIA, Secret Service, FBI. The day we opened, we became a terror threat. So we hope nothing ever happens, but they're telling us that we're on the list. Not a good feeling. So we have to worry about that. So we have to make sure we have a DR strategy that will back up all that data if something happens where we have it somewhere else and can get to it very quickly.
We talked a little bit about that part, making sure that we're doing knowledge transfer as we're installing things and running the operations. And again, having people on site when it's event day. And not only that, but we're out there normally at least once a week, again, check and make sure our equipment's performing as expected. The good part is to watch the interaction. I go there often, but I'm not there as often as a lot of my services people. And to watch the interaction of Bill's group and our services group, you would have to check IDs to find out who's a Dallas Cowboy employee, who's an HP employee. And just to watch Bill's guys make fun of my guys, it's just, you'd think they're all on the same team. And it's been a fantastic experience. And some of that's, again, we have remote services that we work with to help the Cowboys as well. So it allows them to spend 80% of their time bringing value to the business units. How can they drive more revenue for the Cowboys? How can they increase the customer experience within the stadium, the fan experience? So when you go to that venue, that's a venue you want to return to instead of, because they compete. They're going to compete with the Texas Rangers, the Dallas Mavericks, any other sporting event, concerts, movies. There's only how much funding people have to have discretionary spending on entertainment. And so the Cowboys have to make that the go-to place. I think that's it.
I think we're done.
I think they wanted you to use the microphone if you had questions, so by all means, ask away.
First of all, very impressive. 2 questions. One, how does it physically compare to the size of the MCG in Australia? I know it's not a dome stadium, but sits 120,000 people. Yeah, just something to think about.
Well, we could actually, for a concert, we could get 144,000 in the stadium. So, with a football game, it's harder to do that. But with, a concert or certain events that would be on the floor, we could change configuration, things like that. So we could get up to 144,000 in the stadium. Would we ever get that many in there? I don't know. That'd be a lot of people in one place.
Yeah. Now, the serious question, you say you're looking at SRM. How do you do your data centre, your IT infrastructure transition every year to one of your other data centres today if you're not using SRM or something similar? So you say you transfer all of your processing?
Well, we do SAN-to-SAN data replication.
Yep.
And then for all the VMs that are mission critical that we run, we do snapshot backups of them, and they go across with the data transfer. So if we had to stand them up in another facility, we could. It will take a lot more work than what SRM would make it when we get that done, but we could do that.
But do you actually, you said you run everything out of another data center at least once a year. Do you actually do that whole failover or transfer manually every year?
We have for a few services, not very wide, but to test to make sure the data replication and things are working, we have brought up a few ancillary services remotely that would have come from the stadium or come from Valley Ranch at another location to make sure that they are still operational.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Wow, that was easy.
Yeah.
Okay.
Here we go. Here comes the tough one.
Yeah, this is a pretty tough question. It's a tough crowd. But fantasy draft tomorrow. How's Romo looking? I need some help. I need a quarterback, and I need some inside information.
Romo's probably going to be okay.
I'd sign him.
Okay.
I'd go with him.
Yeah.
All right. Very impressive. Thank you very much, guys.
Then you can ask the ladies how he's looking, too.
I'm less concerned about his...
Yeah, just wonder how much time you spent actually scoping out the IT build phase, having gone out to all of your business partners and companies to understand what their plans were, how long you spent doing that prior to build, and who did that? Did you do that or did HP do it for you? How did that all work?
The organization itself approached the technology vendors in the market with kind of, what we wanted to do, and what we approached all the vendors with was, okay, show us your 3-year, 5-year, 7-year, 10-year technology roadmap to see where they're going. We didn't want to put in something that in 3 years was going to be absolutely obsolete with no upgrade potential or capabilities at all. So it took us about 14 months to actually go through that process with all the vendors we spoke to.
On the HP side, it was a good year, many, many, many meetings. And when Pete, the CIO, came on, which is, 5 seasons ago, they traveled the world looking at different stadiums to gather all kinds of information, not only from the data side and the IT side, but even from the cosmetic side.
For spending all the technology, my boss, Pete Walsh, the CIO. I don't remember the exact time frame of what the return was, but I know that in certain instances, what we were able to do with the digital signage technology and some of that, we've already paid that money back. Now we're making a lot more money than what they expected.
And much faster.
Yeah.
And you can tell because the marketing organization of the Cowboys are much more involved in IT now because they're seeing the spend and the revenue streams.
I didn't hear the first part of the question. I'm sorry.
In the beginning of the presentation, you mentioned the cost of Cowboy Stadium. How much of that is IT spend, and what's the operational annual cost
Well, we
to support
spent
that?
$40 million for the big screen. The entire stadium was $1.2 billion. We spent somewhere in the neighborhood of between $50 and $60 million on the technology that we put into the stadium itself.
Primarily the concession stand applications, are those distributed, and are you doing more like synchronous replication between the two? And if there's a back-end technology, is it not running in VMware? What's the replication there to kind of bring that up in the event of a disaster?
No, the back-end piece of it is SQL-based, so it is clustered. Currently, it is not virtualized, but we're looking at that. Part of what we had to worry about from those type of applications and technologies is would the vendor support it in a virtualized world? A lot of them would not. So now the one we deal with has come out where they will support it with their newest version. We've been in the process in our what we call our off season. It wasn't very long upgrading to their latest version of that technology so we could get it to a virtualized world, so we would have a little bit more flexibility and resiliency on the back end if there was a problem. But it's a true client-server application, so they talk all the way back to the server every time.
And I think that speaks to the Cowboys brand as well, because at the beginning they weren't virtualized.
No.
As a solution.
Yeah, what we originally went with was a software product that was very good in the restaurant business, but they were used to 3 or 4 terminals and 1 server, and I told them I needed 665 and a bunch of servers, and so it pushed that company a little bit as well, because they had to go back and rewrite their software to support the way we wanted to run the application.
That's our biggest struggle right now is you have front-end servers, and VMware is a real easy fix, but where does VMware and HP start playing when you have these large databases on the back end, and you're seeing where VMware works well now with that, but you still got the replication of all that large data, and what's HP doing with VMware to kind of to solve that problem? It's a big issue for us.
Mm-hmm. Other questions?
How much room did you save, or how much room did you save for future growth in your new data center? You have a combination to possibly expand. Obviously, you're limited by whatever you put in the stadium.
Sure. From a footprint perspective, we have empty floor space we could go into and add additional racks. But when we were building out the racks, we never went more than about 60% full in any rack. So if we have to, we can stack more in the existing racks that are there, but we do have floor space that if we need to actually put in more empty racks and grow from there, we have that ability too. So.
And your power and cooling's up to that too.
Yeah.
There's probably enough that Jerry could start his 38th business by being a co-location. There's room for growth.
Yeah, we have the end of the rows. And I'll go back on this, try to find this slide just to talk to it. You can be able to see part of it. Okay, right there. That blue box on the end, right here, is a power distribution unit. We have a duplicate mirrored one of those on the other end of this front row of racks. So they're both fed from different power feeds underground that are fed from 2 different power feeds coming in from the power company. So every rack inside itself has PDUs mounted in the back that take the power feeds off each end. So I have dual power feeds to every rack. And then at the top, we did all of our cabling overhead. The end racks on all of our rows are our switching and routing hardware. So I have a redundant set of all this hardware in the row on the very end. So everything is dual fiber fed and dual copper fed to each end. And then I have a diesel generator dedicated to that room.
A single generator?
Single generator.
You should really try to visit the facility. It's the #1 tourist attraction in Dallas-Fort Worth.
Anything else? Cool. Well, thank you guys for coming out. I hope it was insightful. I hope you enjoyed it. Thank you.